anyone hear me? Hello? Testing sound. Okay. I'm not sure where our chat box is. Okay, my voice doesn't sound very loud. Ooh. Is this any better? I don't know what that's for. Okay. Wow. Okay, found the chat room. Okay, is that any better? So, what do we think? Is this better? Can anybody hear me? How's the sound now? Tina, Ariella? This is Chanah. I'm signed in as guest 443 today. No feedback. Sound is too low. Let me see what I can do about that. Sound like I'm in a muffled room. Okay. How about this? Is this any better? You're right. How's this? Louder? Okay, I've changed the sound volume. Any better now? Or do we need to have tech assist? Oh, I think I may have found it. Okay, let me know how this volume is. Okay, now I've got this turned up as far as it'll go. Is this good, everyone? A tiny bit. Well, it's up as loud as it will go on my end. Okay, so tonight, I can't spell. Tonight we are going to look at the story of Bala'am and his talking donkey. Good, I'm glad we got much better sound now. Okay, this story is in Parsha Balak, which is numbers 22 through 25-9. Now, are either of you familiar with this story? Have you read about Bala'am and the talkie donkey? Are you familiar? Are we starting from scratch here? Give you a second here. Okay, great. Because the brief overview, great, great, great. Well, there's some interesting points in this story that a lot of people don't stop to really take a look at. And, of course, Bala'am is asked by the king to go ahead and curse the Jews, which Balaam's probably thinking, okay, yeah, I could do this. I could get rich. This sounds good. I'm a soothsayer. I know how to do all of this stuff. Not a problem. And then God comes into the story. Get the right story here, the right page. And so God came to Balaam, and God wants to know, what are these people? What do these Moabites want with you? And so Balaam came out and told him that the king sent him the message and said, this is a people that came out of Egypt, and they hide the earth from view. What does it mean to hide the earth from view? Any idea what we're talking about? They're hiding the earth from view. What does that tell us about these people? It tells us that they are that numerous that the Moabites cannot see the land. The people have spread out. They are everywhere, and the land is not to be seen because of the quantity of the Israelites and the people. So the king's like, well, yeah, come on, curse these for me. I can engage them in battle. I can drive them off. We will get rid of them. And then God steps in and says to Balaam, do not go with them. Do not curse those people. Those people were blessed. So far it sounds okay. The story seems clear. And then we see that he got up in the morning and said to the dignitaries for the king told them to go back to their own country. And they did. When they got back to the king, they said, Bala'am refused to come with us. He is not going to do anything for us. Then the king, of course, turned around. And the second time, he sent different dignitaries, different people. And these people were more numerous. There were more of them. And they were far more distinguished than the first contingent that Balak sent out to see Balaam. And then they come to him again and says, and this time they say, the king, Balak, will reward you richly, and will do anything that you ask of him. Only come and curse this people for me. So Balaam's thinking about it, and he's like, doesn't matter how much silver, doesn't matter how much gold you give me, there's nothing I can do, because my God commands me not to. But stay overnight here. Let me find out what else the Lord says to me. So that night we see that God comes to Bala'am and says, if these men have come to invite you, you may go with them. But whatever I command you is what you shall do. Now with the first contingent, God has told Bala'am not to go. Do not go, do not curse his people. But we see God changing God's mind here, because suddenly now he's telling Bala'am that yes, you can go with them because they have invited you. So we see a shift here, but you can only do what I command you. So when everybody got up in the morning, Balaam saddled his donkey and he went with the Moabites to the king. And the very next verse, 22, says, God was incensed at Bala'am With the first contingent, God told Bala'am not to go. The second time, when Bala'am spoke with God, God says, "If they have come to invite you, you may go with them." So he gets up in the morning, he goes with them, and God's incensed. How can God be angry and incensed with Bala'am for doing what God told him to do? I'll give you a few minutes. Let's see what kind of comments that you have to make on this particular verse. It's like, wait a minute. First you tell me not to, then you tell me I can, and now you're mad because I went. What kind of a deal has God got going on here? What do you think is happening with him? No comments? Ariella? Tina? God, it is said that God is not angry with Balaam for actually going. Balaam is angry because of his motive for going. What did the king promise Balaam? Oh, I'm sorry, you can't hear very well. Okay, we've got this up. Okay, let me type this in. So we have in 12, verse 12, God tells Balaam, yeah, if I could spell, not to go. The next verse is, okay, so Balak sends more dignitaries. We'll have to have our friends get on the sound thing and find out what's going on. And, okay, this time Bala'am asks God what to do. God says that if the men have come to invite him, then Bala'am may go. So they stay overnight, and the next morning, in verse 21, Bala'am goes with the Moabites. And suddenly, in verse 22, God is incensed and angry. Why? After all, God first says no, then changes his mind and says yes, and then when Bala'am goes, gets incensed. You know, it's like, what kind of a deal? Right? God's giving him enough rope to hang himself. We see that happening. How many of us have had that situation with our kids? You say, oh yeah, we'll give them enough rope and they'll hang themselves. We don't have to get them in trouble. They're going to do it all on their own. And God distrusted his motives. And then on the path, the angel, which in the Hebrew text is Satan, which means to divert from the way, to divert away. Exactly. Why is it that Bala'am, the seer, can't see God? After all, if Bala'am is such a great seer, prophet, wizard, whatever you want to call him, exactly, his powers. Oh, you can hear. Okay, great. Ariella can hear me. What about you, Tina? Can you hear me any better now? His powers, if any, were limited. Okay? Right. Whatever you want to call him, he's limited. Is God trying to drum this lesson into him, perhaps? Sort of like what God did with Egypt. I am more powerful. Right? True prophets have a chance to show mercy and love. Exactly, Tina. So, what does this tell us about Balaam? If you want to run and get him, we'll wait for you to catch up, Tina. We'll give you a second so you can go get caught up. Just give us a note when you're back so we know. Yeah, exactly. The animal, the donkey's smarter. It's like a bumper sticker. My donkey's smarter than its owner. You know, your donkey is smarter than its owner because in this case, apparently the donkey was smarter. The donkey had more spiritual discernment, and he was able to see if God, and then we go back to the messengers, if God were angry, when we were talking about why would God be angry, and we're questioning Balaam's motives, well, if Balaam were to offer to go back home, wouldn't God say, that's right, go home? But instead, God repeats his original instructions. Go with the messengers and say only what I tell you to say. And he's going back and forth because he wants to be sure that he drives home that point to Bala'am, that Bala'am had better be doing only what God says and nothing else. So did you get your microphone? Okay. Did you get your things already back? Ooh, that's awesome. Great. I'm really glad to hear that now, Tina. We're glad you can hear us. Saves me a little bit more typing on my end and gives us room for a little bit more discussion. So that's great. So God doesn't seem to trust Bala'am to really do what he's told because, we have that donkey and he is diverting. Great, great, great. And let's see. Then the donkey who saw God again, because God's going to see him more than one time. First, he's riding on his donkey, and Bala'am, that poor donkey, swerved off into the fields, and then God came back, stood in the lane with the angel stood in the lane between the vineyards, and once again, the donkey who sees the angel presses herself against the wall and squishes Balaam's foot while she's at it. So Balaam beats her for the second time, and then what happens? God comes back with this angel, stations the angel so close in front of the donkey for the third, now we're at the third time, that there's nowhere that the donkey can go, and so the donkey stops. And Balaam was even more furious. This time, 3 strikes and you're out. Well, Balaam's about to be out because now he's beating the donkey for the third time. And now the donkey has a voice. The donkey has the voice of God. Kind of like an Aesop fable here. We have a talking donkey, an owner who's not really doing what he's supposed to be doing. He's got evil, wicked motives at heart. God's trying to give him a message. He's not listening. God needs to step in a little bit stronger. And so Balaam says, well, what have I done? First, we have the donkey. Donkey says, what have I done that you beat me 3 times? And Bala'am said, you made a mockery of me. If I had a sword, I'd kill you. How is it that the donkey has made a mockery of Bala'am? What does it mean to make a mockery of something? What have you got to say? Give you a second to get caught up. What do you think? Making a mockery of Bala'am. Any thoughts, comments? What does it mean when we mock somebody? Bala'am is claiming that donkey is making a mockery of him. What's he claiming that? What is that? He doesn't seem to be the least bit disturbed or curious or amazed that the donkey's talking. But he's arguing with the donkey. It could be embarrassment, yeah. He's expected to destroy the Israelites with words, yes. But he's beating the donkey. He's not seeing what he's supposed to be seeing because he can't see the angel of God, and the donkey can. So his spiritual seeing powers are not where they ought to be. So he's not much in the way of a true prophet, a true seer, a wizard. And the donkey reminds him, you've been riding me all these times until now. Have I ever been in the habit of being like this? Do I normally act like this when you try to make me go somewhere? Kind of like a discussion. Right, he's showing his true character. He's being abusive. He's supposed to be a holy prophet. He's not the least bit disturbed or amazed that the donkey's talking to him. And the donkey's like, huh, I've always been good to you. Until this day, I've always done exactly what I'm supposed to do. I've listened, and now you treat me like this. Have I ever acted this way before? And Bala'am, he has to admit, no, the donkey's always behaved himself. So then God uncovers Bala'am's eyes. So God shows him the light. And in the text, let me find it here. Adonai et Einei by Vayagal, to uncovered Adonai et Einim, eyes, Bala'am, so he uncovered Bala'am's eyes, the yars, allowing the manifestation of Malach, the messenger, Adonai, Neva, in the center of, Nitzav, Baderek, in the way. So he's uncovering, he's giving him a chance to see. The manifestation. So Bala'am can go, oh, wow, ooh. And now he's come, the angel asks him the same question. Why are you beating your donkey? And it says, I came out as an adversary. This errand is obnoxious to me. And when the donkey saw me, she shied away because of me those 3 times. If she had not shied away, I would have killed you and spared her. Why would he have killed Bala'am? What kind of comments? What do you think about that? First God says go, then he says no, then he says go ahead and go, and then he gets angry, and then the donkey's turning away because the donkey has more seeing ability than Bala'am, and now the angel is saying, I would have taken care of her and killed you. If you were Bala'am, how would you be feeling right now? I personally would be frustrated. So Bala'am says, well, I made a mistake. I didn't know you were there. But if you disapprove of what I'm doing, I will go home. And does the angel say go home? Yeah, go ahead, go home. Scoot. No, the angel says keep going. But you must say nothing except what I tell you to say. Right. He's humbling himself now. He's backing up a few steps and going, uh-oh, I have really made some mistakes here. It's time for me to, hold my act together. So Balak finally hears Balaam's coming, goes out to meet him, and says, why didn't you come with me the first time? Am I really unable to reward you? And Balaam says, well, now I have come to you. Do I have the power to speak freely? Is it okay? Because I can only tell you what God puts in my mouth. So it seems like Balaam has learned the lesson that God wants him to learn. So they went to a place, Kiriath-Huzoth, and Balak sacrificed some oxen and sheep, had them served up. That was dinner. And in the morning he took Balaam up the hill, and from there he could see a portion of this teeming mass of people out there, so thick that you can't even see the ground. And Balaam says, okay, build me 7 altars, have 7 bulls, 7 rams ready for me. And then they got it all together, and Balaam offers up 1 bull, 1 ram on each altar. And then Balaam says, now stay here beside your offerings while I'm gone. Maybe God will send me a manifestation, and whatever he reveals to me, I'll tell you about it. And so, he goes off. God manifests. God says, I've set up, and Balaam says to God, I've set up those 7 altars. I've offered up the bull and the ram on each one. And the Lord put the word in Balaam's mouth and said, go back and tell Balak. So he returned, and then he does his speech that from Aram has Balak brought me, from Moab's king, from the hills of the east. Come, curse me, Jacob. Come, tell Israel's doom. How can I damn whom God has not damned? How can I doom when the Lord has not doomed? As I see them from the mountain tops, I gaze on them from the heights. There is a people that dwells apart, not reckoned among the nations. Who can count the dust of Jacob? Number the dust cloud of Israel. May I die the death of the upright. May my fate be like theirs. And Balak is understandably angry. He's like, what have you done to me? How could you do this? I brought you to curse my enemies, and you blessed them. And he tries this again, and it happens the same time the second. It's the same routine. And then when Balaam comes back, the new poem he says is, up, Balak, attend. Give ear unto me, son of Zippor. God is not man to be capricious, or mortal to change his mind. Would God speak and not act? Would God promise and not fulfill? Oh, yes, by all means. Where are you, Ariel? Where's Brandon? Is that in Missouri? I hear the Midwest is getting some really bad rain and thunderstorms. You stay safe. I'm in Florida. We may be getting a tropical storm the end of the week. Time to batten down the hatches. Ah, okay. Yep. Then you know where I'm at. I'm at my mother's place here in Ocala, and I live over on the beach side, over in Daytona. Yeah, it's headed our way. Well, you stay safe over there. And hopefully we'll see you next week. Yeah, I hear you. Okay. But think about, when you're gone, think about the lesson that we have from Balak is, how often do we persist in doing something? How often do we know we're on the wrong path and still we continue? Because that's our real lesson. Stay warm and dry. Oh, well, you may be getting rain too, because you're north of us. I'm only about maybe an hour from St. Pete. Yay. So we'll see. Hopefully it'll stay on that side of the coast. Oh, well, thank you. I like that, Ariella. And when you're gone, we'll know, but we'll send you blessings, send you nice little blessings of warmth and also safety so that you don't lose your power and you stay nice and dry. So, yeah, when we look at this story, because Balaam continues to do this and Balak continues to say, do it, Balaam keeps saying, by the time we get to the end of the story with the last poem, the very last one, well, we can read the second poem here. The second one, or let's see. God is not man to be capricious or mortal to change his mind. I'm glad. Would God speak and not act? Would God promise and not fulfill? My message was to bless. And when God blesses, I cannot reverse God's blessing. There is no harm in sight for Jacob, no woe in view for Israel. The Lord their God is with them. Their kings acclaim in their midst. God who freed them from Egypt is for them like the horns of the wild ox. Lo, there is no augury in Jacob, no divining in Israel. Jacob is told at once, yea, Israel, what God has planned. Lo, a people that rises like a lion, leaps up like the king of beasts, rests not till it has feasted on its prey and drunk the blood of the slain. This is biblical poetry, and it's quite visual. A people that rises up like a lion, leaps up like a king of beasts, feasts upon its prey, drunk the blood of the slain. And this is exactly what Balak is worried about, that Israel is coming to him to destroy him like the lion that they are. And we see that lion imagery a lot with Israel. We see it with Judah, and so that's pretty common. There again, we have it one more time that, they're going to do the sacrifices of the bulls and the rams on the next 7 altars. And this, the third time, Bala'am doesn't go off to listen to what has God to say. This time, Balaam just turns his face to the wilderness. And Balaam looked up and he felt the presence of God. And then he took up his theme. He continued this poem that he's been chanting. He did the first verse, and then we saw the second verse, and it's getting tougher and tougher. And now here comes the conclusion of what Balaam is saying, that these words that God has put into his mouth. Word of Balaam, son of Beor. Word of the man whose eye is true. Word of him who hears God's speech, who beholds visions from the Almighty. Prostrate, but with eyes unveiled. Here it comes. How fair are your tents, O Jacob, your dwelling places, O Israel. Here's where it comes from. How fair are your tents, O Jacob, your dwelling places, O Israel. And we sing this in Shul when we come together and we create our tent of God and our place of intentionality. Like palm groves that stretch out, like gardens beside a river, like aloes planted by the Lord, like cedars beside the water. Their boughs are dripping with moisture. Their roots have abundant water. Their king shall rise above Agag, their kingdom shall be exalted. God who freed them from Egypt is for them like the horns of the wild ox now. They shall devour the enemy nations, crush their bones and smash their arrows. They crouch, they lie down like a lion, like the king of beasts. Who dare rouse them? Blessed are they who bless you. Accursed are they who curse you. And Balak is enraged. He is angry. He's like, ah! But we can see ourselves in this story because Balak knew that he had no business cursing his people. He was afraid. He thought they were coming after him, and they would have just left him alone. They could have just gone by, but he feels the need to intervene. And he intervenes by wanting to curse them in hopes that he can drive them away, he can kill them, he just can destroy them as a people. But that has not been a happening thing. But we look at ourselves. There are moments in each of our lives when we want to do something and we know that something is wrong. And our gut and our mind is the Bala'ak, who continues to insist, yes, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do it my way and it's going to happen. Bala'am and the donkey, specifically the donkey, is kind of like our gut. And we need to learn to trust our gut because our gut is telling us that our mind is wrong, but oftentimes we persist. And we can get ourselves into a whole lot of trouble when we don't follow our gut instincts about what we're doing. If we let that voice in our mind dig us into a hole and entrench us, getting our heels dug into a place where we don't want to go and where we shouldn't be going. And our eyes are covered. We keep our eyes covered. And if we're lucky, we will have a manifestation. Our eyes will be open. Our gut instincts will be revealed to us, and we will be able to move on. Doing the right thing. Because once Balaam's eyes were opened here, then he was able to follow the instructions and he was ready to go the right path. But it took him a while to get there. Why do you think yes, Balaam was a Gentile prophet. He was non-Jewish, not at all. And the Moabites thought they could use him. They thought that because he's not Jewish, he's not one of them, we'll call him in. But he was not as strong or powerful as God. He thought he was, but he wasn't. So even though he wasn't Jewish, God could use him as a story, kind of like an Aesop's fable. And there's a moral here that, sometimes we persist in doing what we know is wrong until our eyes are opened and the truth is revealed and we can go on to do the right thing. He started out more like the dog who got kind of greedy and was going to go for the bone in the river and dropped the bone that he had to get to the bigger bone and ended up with nothing. Bala'am didn't have much, but his motives were questionable because he was thinking, I could get some more here. So he was going to take the bait, go for the bigger bone, and instead he lost it because his the truth was manifested. His eyes were opened, and it was revealed. What kind of comments or questions do you have, Tina? Since it's just the two of us now, what do you have that you might like to say? Anything you want to add? I know I've been in this stubborn mule place, like a donkey. I'm gonna bray and hold my own, dig my feet in. And a donkey's a good choice for this story. I do have a comment here about there was in 1967 a inscription was found from the 8th century BCE at Tel Deir Allah, and it relates the account of Bala'am, son of Beor, the man who was a seer of the gods. So the story goes back, but it's been said that the story is post-exilic, which means it was after the Babylon exile. Ah, okay. So we see the literal level, but one of the deeper levels is how we can apply it to ourselves, which is the great thing about Torah and Torah study is we can manifest these lessons into our lives and keep it current. Right. Yep. Because the donkey was a tool of God. We could say the donkey was more innocent as well. And sometimes when you are more innocent, you see more than those who are jaded in the world. You have a clearer perspective on things because you haven't been jaded and you haven't been used and abused. You haven't taken advantage of people. And I kind of get the feeling that Bala'am was not exactly the right kind of guy. He wasn't exactly a nice guy. Now, something else, another comment that you might find interesting is in chapter 23 with verse 4. Now, let's see. Is it 4? 23:1, 23:4, God manifest. Yep. Okay. Do you read the Hebrew text at all? Yes. I did say that. Where is it? Let me find that for you. Let me find it here. Where did I see that? 22. Maybe it was in 22. Yep, it's in verse 22. Do you read any Hebrew? Because it says in verse 22, Vayahar af. Yes. Okay. Because the word in the Hebrew is ha is la satan. And so we have Lamed. Okay, let me spell this out. Okay, your lamed is, it's a directional letter, so it's kind of like to. So to, the, as, and, it's a directional. The shin, in this case, has the sound of the S, which is s. And then the third letter in this word is tet, which makes a T sound, and it's torn at the top. So then we have final nun, which always says an n sound. So we have le, sa, tan, which is the Satan. When we translate Satan into English, it comes out Satan, but its real meaning is adversary. So when we think about Satan, and we get a different meaning than the Christian variation that says this, Satan is the devil and so on, we have the word Satan, which is adversarial. Adversarial. That's the word I'm looking for. After that, and that's the translation of it. So that is in, let's see, chapter 22, that you'll find that. Now, when you move over into chapter 23, verse 4, we see in the English that it says, God manifested himself to Bala'am. Now, when we go up and we look at the Hebrew, we see Vayikar Elohim. And Vayikar comes with manifestation, and it's spelled Vav, Yud, Kuf, Resh. And the cool thing about it is it's a word, it's a play, it's a word play. We see a lot of word plays in Torah, and it's a word play on this one, which is Yud, Kuf, Resh, Hey. So first we have Vayikar. Now we had Yikar, Yikara, and now in the verse before that we have Likrati, which we see is spelled with the Lamed, Yud. Make sure I spell it correctly here for you. Kuf, Resh, Aleph, which we know is the sound of silence, Tav, Yud. So the first one, we write down its pronunciation, is Vayikar. The second one is Yikra, and then we have Lik. No, sorry about that. That wasn't exactly what I was going to do. Likrati, and they're all connected. Hebrew is based on root letters, and you will have a three-letter root, in which case we would look at all of these and find out which ones they're going to have in common so that we can see what the root's going to be, and it's going to be Kuf, Resh, Hey. And that has to do with seeing, and so all these are words that are built off of that same root by adding the prefixes and the suffixes to the root meaning. And it can help you translate a lot. And in those verses, in 3, we see where God put a word in. Oh, no, we want the next one. In verse 3, where Bala'am says to Balak, "Stay here beside your offerings. I'm going to go, and perhaps God will grant me a manifestation." And the word used right there is Vayikra, and you may recognize Vayikra as also the word for Leviticus, Vayikra. When we call it that in synagogue, because it has to do with the manifestation of God. Right, so seeing is an important point in this story because it's about manifesting. When you do the book of Leviticus, in Hebrew is Vayikra. And it's more than just seeing, it's a deeper seeing. It's more like, oh, good heavens, that's not what I wanted to write. It's manifestation. So it's about the manifestation of the presence of God, which is what Leviticus is. It's about manifestation of ritual law, of this and that, and so on. And it's a way that God manifests in our world and that we can see the manifestation. It's not so much on the literal level, like, oh, gee, look, I see the sun is shining today. It's a deeper seeing when we go, aha, it's been revealed. My eyes are open. Now I see. Because the word for see is ro'eh, which also has to do with seeing, but manifestation. And so we see that going on. And the dwelling of Shekhinah with the people. Yep, yep, yep. These are all little connections. And their word plays. The Torah is full of little word plays like this. They quite literally, no pun intended, manifest everywhere. But when we only read the English, we miss the word plays. And the word plays are really important in the text because they give us, they can be entertaining, like a sense of humor. It's like, oh, look at this, it's a puzzle. What are we saying? And they show up in a lot of the stories. They show up in a lot of the poetry. They show, oh, well, thank you, Tina. They show up in the book of Ruth. There's a good one right there. When Ruth, if you remember the story of Ruth, she lays down with, let me think of his name, in the threshing, and it says she laid by his feet. In biblical Hebrew, the feet that she is lying down and she uncovers is is his penis. And that was a slang word for it at that time. So we see slang in the language as well. And it's lots and lots of fun. So there's great reading in here. Oh, look, it's 8:58. Before we finish up here, I have to remind everybody that OneShul runs on donations, grants, and money. Oh, yes, Boaz, that's him. So when she uncovers his feet, she's uncovering his penis. It gives a little bit more interest to the story. I wouldn't explain that to the children, but, we'll leave it at that for small children. But somehow it's gotten away over the years and the slang's vanished and we bring it back. My spiel is, put another shekel in that little pushkatin. Right now, I am teaching on Monday evenings with Torah study, but I would like to teach another class. So if there is a subject that you would be interested in, let me know and I will present it to Patrick, to Rabbi Patrick, and see if we can, put that little shekel in, put it in that pushkatin, donate, donate, donate. So we ask that you donate what you're comfortable with. Rabbi Patrick says a good minimum is $5, more, less, you know how we are. Jewish standard funds. So there we go. But right now, like I said, right now I'm only teaching on Monday nights and thinking about another class. And I was thinking maybe a beginning Hebrew class, starting with the Aleph base and moving forward with those and looking at some roots so that people can help me find these fun things in the Torah. So if you would be interested, drop us a line at OneShul and let us know. Do you have any more comments or are there any more questions? What about you, Jadel? Do you have any comments or questions before we sign off for this evening? Prescott, you're from Prescott. Arizona, Prescott? It's dry out there. It's wet on our side of the country. Okay, well, we don't have any more comments and we don't have any more questions. I will sign off and I will be here next week, Monday night. Oh, so could I, Tina. So could I. And next week's Parsha is Pinchas, which is kind of a continuation of the back half because we'll actually pick the story up before Pinchas. We'll actually pick it up at the very last of. Oh, yeah, I should say that, huh? Yeah, I have a master's in Jewish studies and have done some rabbinical work, so I would be happy to teach whatever you folks would like to learn. My major was in Jewish philosophy, or my major was Jewish studies, minor in philosophy, and worked with rabbinics. So, because next week, before we move into Pinchas, we're going to pick the story up at the tail end of Balak, because we've seen that Balak was not able to curse the people. So he's got another plan in mind. So this is kind of like part one. Stay tuned next week, part two, and we will continue the tale. So have a good evening, everyone, and I will see all of you next week, I hope. Spread the word among your friends. It'd be great to have a larger group. Night.